division, we are just going to be making a box with only the coefficients. Okay? So inside your box is going to be the coefficients of what you would normally put inside if you were doing log division. Okay? So the coefficients here are, what do I have in front of x cubed? 2. And then in front of x squared, -5. And in front of x, 5. And then my constant is -2. Right? Same rule applies here as yesterday. If they skip a term, we need a placeholder. Luckily, they didn't skip any terms here, so we didn't have to worry about that. Okay, then we also need a number out here on the outside that's going to come from our divisor. So it's always going to be the opposite of the number after x. So the number after x here is a -1, so we're going to use a positive 1. So that's what I'm going to put here. So all we did was make it positive. Always use the opposite sign. If it was positive, I would have made it a negative. Okay. All right, so once we have our box set up, we start synthetic division. So it, again, is kind of like yesterday in that there's a couple of steps that you just continually repeat until you're out of numbers. So the first step is just to bring down your first term. So our first term is 2. I'm just going to bring it down below the line. So our step 1 was bring down. Okay. Our step 2 is going to be to multiply. We're going to multiply the number down here by the number on the outside. So for us, that would be 2 times 1, which is just 2. And that's what I'm going to put in my next spot. Okay. After we have multiplied, my next step is to add. I'm going to add these two terms together. So I have -5 plus 2, which would give us -3. And then we just repeat. Okay? So, start here, we've already brought it down, right? Then I'm going to multiply. -3 times 1 would give us, and then I'm going to add. 5 plus -3 would give me 2, and then I repeat. 2 times 1 would give me 2, and then I add. -2 plus 2 would give me 0. So, these do need to look the same as our final answers from yesterday. So, remember that all of our answers yesterday had x's or x squareds or things with our numbers. So, these are just coefficients, right? So, once you have found all of your numbers, you are going to mark off the last term. The last term always will be representing your remainder. And then we're going to work backwards. So this would be my constant. This would be my x. And this would be my x squared. So my answer here would be 2x squared, because that was the coefficient with x squared. And then I would have negative 3x and then my constant is positive 2. Did we have a remainder? So we don't have to write one. That would be our answer right there. Okay. All right, so let's try that again. So on number 2, remember, the first term is what goes inside. This part is what goes outside, just like when we're doing long division. So inside my box, I'm going to put my coefficients for this. What's my first coefficient? 3. And then what? Good. And very good. Okay, and then remember the number we put out here comes from this term, and we always make it opposite. So it says negative 2, so we're going to use positive 2. Okay. And then we're just going to follow the steps from above. So my first step is to do what? Bring down that 3. And then what should we do? Multiply. So we got 3 times 2, which is going to give us 6. And then what's our next step? Add them. So I have negative 7 plus 6. Good. And then we repeat that, right? So negative 1 times 2. Good. And then we add and get 7. Very good. And then my last one, 7 times 2 would give us, and then I add and get 0. So now we have all of our coefficients. Remember, you always mark off the last term, and this last term represents our what? Remainder. And then we're just going to work backwards. So the 7 would be our constant. Very good. Negative 1 would be, and the 3 is. Also, just a little hint, anytime you're dividing, that means you're taking away, right? We started with a cube, so when I'm done, I should be 1 degree less. So I was a cube, now I'm a square, because we divided, we took something away. Okay. So now I just need to write this as, or with its coefficients. So in front of x squared, what number do I have? 3, so I got 3x squared, and then what? Negative 1x, or just negative x, plus 7. Very good. And there is no remainder, so we don't have to make one of those fractions like we did yesterday. There's our answer. Yes, same rule as yesterday. Okay. All right, number 3. So how would I set this one up? What do I need? What am I putting inside the box? 1. Okay, so that was for x to the 5th. Next would be x to the 4th. Did they put 1? Right. Got to put in a 0 because they skipped x to the 4th. Right. And 4. Right. And then what would come after x squared? Right, 0 x's, and then we would need one more for the constant. Right, so they skipped 3 things when they wrote here. Okay? All right, and what am I going to put on the outside? Positive 4, very good. they skip something. So first step is to do what? Bring it down. So then what? Okay, and we would then put that here. Then what do I do with those two numbers? Add them. And then what? What would I get next? And then we would get, okay, and then we add and get, good. And then we got to multiply again, right? So 12 times 4 is, good. And 4 plus 48 is 52. Okay? And then 52 times 4 is, good. And 0 plus 208 is just, and then the last one, I've got 208 times 4. Okay. And 0 plus 832 is just 832. Right? Okay. So now that we have all of our coefficients, now I just need to go and label them so I can write it down correctly. So I always mark off the last one, right? So that 832 is my what? Very good. What's the 208? Constant. And then 52 would be 12 x squared. 4 would be x cubed, and 1 would be, which makes sense, right? We took out one of the x's. It started as x to the 5th, so my answer should be 1 degree less, which is x to the 4th. All right, so now I just need to write this all out. So do we need a coefficient in front of x to the 4th? No. And what would I have next? So I got to put plus 4x cubed. Good. Then what? Good. Plus 208. And then we are going to follow our rule from yesterday. So remember, depending on what that number is, positive or negative, we put the sign down. And then I put my remainder over my divisor, which in this case was x minus 4. Right? So 832, I kind of ran out of room here, over x minus